Welcome to Rising Tide Startups, where we chat with startup founders and solopreneurs just like you from all over the globe. During our chat today, picture yourself starting your own startup journey. If our guests can do it, you can too. Every episode of Rising Tide Startups is sponsored by Podbrand Media. Let Podbrand create and host your company-branded podcast. Learn more at podbrandmedia.com. This is Rising Tide Startups, and my name is Kevin Pruitt. It's an honor to host this podcast, and we've been doing it for a number of years now, and every now and then I just reach out to a special guest that we've had in the past and just want them to come back on and give us an update on how things are going, and this today is one of those times. Petra Zink. Petra, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Thanks so much for having me back. I'm honestly excited about this conversation. It's been a hot minute, as we just established it since we spoke last.
That it certainly has. It actually has been too long. So, Petra, tell our audience a little bit, like if you and I met at a networking event, how would you introduce yourself to me?
I always say I work with founders and executives and help them turn their expertise and their reputation into scalable assets. And basically what it means is how can you package and systemize what you know into assets that live beyond you, so either your team can run with them and or you can monetize what you bring to the table outside of your role. And especially now as we're heading into a very different landscape and we're also seeing a change of the economy coming up, it's more important than ever that you are actually standing out with your systemized and packaged IP that makes you different to other knowledge workers and of course also different to AI.
That is quite a description there. We were just discussing on the previous episode we had. We talked a little bit about, her background and how she arrived, but she, originally from Austria, now living in Australia and has for a number of years. And so Petra, let's tell us, just remind our listeners, we got new listeners here. So remind them just a quick story about how you arrived in the down under and how it went.
Absolutely. I literally just celebrated my 16th anniversary
Wow,
in Australia.
congratulations.
Thank you. And I came for 6 months, so I never planned to stay here. My background is brand and product marketing in the FMCG space, and I did that for the first 10 years of my career until I was called into my manager's office on a Friday, and I expected the promotion, and she put me on a performance improvement plan. And let's just say it took me by surprise, and it bruised my ego. Not a little, but a lot. And I thought, I'm not good enough for marketing. I need to get out of here. Now, at that stage, because I progressed so quickly in my career, I actually did not upskill in digital marketing and social media because I was always focusing on brand and product development. And now, looking for other roles, everyone expected me to have hands on experience with campaigns and social media content and so forth. With that said, I've had teams at that stage that did that for me, and I couldn't find another job. So that was a bit of an eye opener for me. So much so that when I started talking to recruiters, they actually said, have you ever thought of recruitment? And of course I said, no, why would I? Duh. I've got a master's in marketing. Why would I go into recruitment? Anyway, long story short, I got into recruitment and started what they called back then the digital and tech desk. So basically, anyone in digital marketing, design, software engineering, that was an up and coming industry. However, nobody knew exactly what it meant. And what I found out, because I didn't necessarily have this technical background, I just asked a lot of questions, basic questions. But because of my commercial background, I also understood from a business side of things what skills can actually do to a business. And I became an advisor to clients that I had never met before simply by explaining what technical skills actually do and contribute to a business. And this got me interested and curious in identifying what if there's there a system or a method or a framework that I can teach my candidates back then that they can actually clarify what their unique value proposition is in a way that resonates with their target audience. Then they can communicate it clearly and confidently. And with that, they can commercialize it through a more senior role, through a board director engagement, or through their own business. And this is how impact with the three C's came about.
I love it. And tell us about the unique spelling of impact again. I mean, I know it has a meaning behind it.
Yes, so it's the three C's because what it comes down to when I ask my candidates back in recruitment, what do you want to do in your next role? And people said, I don't know, but I want to make an impact. And I got this answer over and over again. Now, a 20-year-old, for them, what it means it's to earn 75K. And for a 65-year-old, it means to leave a legacy. And I just thought you need to clarify what you actually want because then you can communicate and ask for it, and then you can commercialize it. And this is why impact has the three C's because it is basically my framework how you can go from unknown and people having no idea what you're actually doing for them to becoming the go-to in your industry.
I love the broad kind of the broad strategy of anybody that needs to be able to monetize their skill set, and it's how do they make a greater impact. But you're kind of going against like conventional wisdom sometimes that says you've got to really niche down to find your ideal client, but it sounds like to me that your ideal client is a broad range.
It is and it isn't. So when we go to the core of the crux of it, it needs to be a technical expertise. So anything that has, um, professional services is a great example because there's a system to the method how they are winning a lawsuit, or how they are building a house if they're an architect, or how they are finding the tiny little things that make all the difference in a forensic accounting case. I'm not working with artists, for example, or very spiritual people who rely a lot on emotion for their work because not my area of expertise at all. So the crux of it, how can you turn your expertise that is based on experience and education into something that can be repeatable and replicable so that also others can use your method and or you can scale your reputation through different assets. It may be a book, it may be an online course, it may be a consulting offer, but there is a system to the madness with what you do. And especially nowadays, if we think of AI and a lot of information and a lot of competition with redundancies left, right, and center. Like there are so many elements contributing to this, but people are not trusting others anymore, and skepticism is an all-time high. The way how we can stand out is we want to make our knowledge and what we actually can do for others visible through frameworks, through a language that people understand. And this is what I call the authority assets. When people say, I've got 20, 30 years experience in communication, I don't know what that means. Are you good? Are you bad? Have you ever upskilled? Like it doesn't tell me any of the value that you can bring to me. So why would I engage you versus somebody who says, well, I can help your organization to go from being confused to being a talent magnet. So this is a very unique value proposition if I'm attracting talents. So this is where the or the difference is all about. How do you communicate what you bring to a table to a specific audience that then pay for that?
Mm. So let's do a little role play here. So let's say
Yes.
that I'm a client of yours. We've just started. What's kind
Mhm.
of the first step? Like, and maybe something that our listeners can even do on their own to kind of get started on this journey of kind of discovering their own hidden talents or their own, monetizable talents. So how would you begin to coach me or coach anybody through this?
I love this question because there is a framework to it. Now, the difference between starting with a personal brand versus a company brand is that we start with you, whereas with the company brand, we start with market research, what's out there, what's the competitive landscape, and so forth. However, with you as a personal brand, we need to start with what you bring to the table. And with that, we collect data points. So, firstly, we conduct an online audit. If we type in your name, what comes up? Is it what comes up actually what you want to be known for? And if not, how can we course correct it? So this is one data point. But then the other elements are a skill assessment, and we're also looking into transferable skills. Like I've worked with lawyers who have studied law, but who've never practiced law because they don't like it. But he said, I literally spent, the last 6 years and however much $1,000 on the degree. I can only do law. I was like, no, 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 you can do a lot more. So what have you learned? And it's reading between the lines. It's being able to turn something very complex in something simple. And this is where we can tell a story. So even your story is an authority asset that sets you apart from others. We also go through the stages in your life, like the 10 to 20. years, 20 to 30 and so forth. Because what we are looking for is what were those turning moments and those sliding door experiences that got you here. Because when we then try to rebrand you, we need to connect the dots for others. And we can only do it by looking back. And if I've got, I'm a group fitness instructor, I'm a marketer, I'm a recruiter, literally my background. They're like, you're random, you've got nothing in common. Whereas if I translate that and say, I bring the best out of people and I can push them beyond their own beliefs, and here's the expertise or the touch points that I can prove that, now all of a sudden I own the story and people would say, oh yeah, that makes sense. We can't leave it up to chance for people to identify what we're all about and why they should hire us, especially when we are in this transition. And I usually work with my clients in a transition or inflection point. They want to step into this next level, but they're not quite there, which means that we also have to understand what are their belief systems. Because my little formula is your beliefs plus your behavior build your brand. So if I want to reshape how I want to be seen and perceived, I need to act differently. But if I don't believe that I'm good enough, that I've got what it takes, and so forth, I won't take the action required to get there. So this is where we then address anything that could hold you back and create systems around it that people can't just fall behind. If we say we want to improve our public speaking skills, but then the behavior would be I need to either not just either. And I need to practice, and I need to pitch myself to podcasts, and I need to host lunch and learns with my teams, and I need to speak up in meetings. So, what are those touch points, and how can we make sure that we get the reps in to build the muscle that then creates the replicable behavior that then turns us into that brand? So, there are quite a few elements to it, but the first step is to gather all the touch points and data that we already have, and it does require a bit of a mix of researching and going through your own history. I usually start with credentials because it's easy to identify what kind of education have I gone through, what have I learned, but then also asking for feedback from people you have worked with, from your friends, from your clients, and ask them, if I was a car, which car would I be and why? And it was like random question, but you would definitely be a blah because of why. Now, what this question helps us to identify is what they see in you without necessarily calling it out. If I say you would be a German Audi because you're always so reliable, I don't want to say you're boring,
Mm-hmm.
but reliable, I
Yeah.
connected already.
Yeah.
And that also then helps us in the second stage when we start about communicating your brand. What are the brands that are already representing those kind of values and traits? What's their color? What's their look and feel? What's the typography? So this is the next step, but this is so far away. And I always say this first foundation piece, the positioning, it's the unsexy work because you actually can't see anything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have not done that and you feel very certain about that, all the marketing assets, they don't mean anything
Yeah.
because, yeah, how can you even prove that?
Do you find that all of your clients are sticking with you through the whole process, or do some of them like, hey, I'm not seeing any results here. I'm gonna bail early, and you're going, hey, we're not there yet, just stay the course. But I mean, do you have to kind of talk them into sticking out at different stages that they tend to, hey, they want to see immediate results?
Love this question. And 100% there are more than not that are dropping off because they don't see immediate results or it does get difficult. With that said, we are not signing up to a gym membership and have six packs the next week. It would be great. Like I would pay a lot for that. It's not a thing. And especially when we get setbacks. And this is why we also need to identify what is your reason for stepping into this journey, because it is a journey. It's not a one-off activity that creates a result. You commit to a lifelong experimentation
Hmm.
and you work out loud and you bring people along the way. Yes, there's 100% a lot of people who are dropping out and say it's too much for me and so forth. What I've then realized is how can I create more of an agency and a done for you service that
Yeah.
people do not have the excuse. But this is, I guess business. You learn along the way to see
Right.
what works, what doesn't work, what's the feedback, what can I offer, what do I want to offer,
Hmm.
and then iterate from there. And now, with AI, for example, I've actually developed custom GPTs with my IP that creates amazing results much quicker. So instead of just relying on my course content and material, my students and my clients can actually use the custom GPTs and get the results for a fraction of the price. And I think we all have to rethink what does value creation look like in the age of AI, because a lot can be done
You either
cheaper.
get on board or not. I mean, it's not going to stop. I mean, it's going to continue. I mean, we're kind of on this. The train has left the station, and there's no way to bring it back. But and plus, I think that's a way that you can scale yourself as well. You know, you can only work with so many people one on one at any given time. So, how many clients do you normally work with at a time that you're actually doing, kind of this full service? Methodology that you're working with clients as a consultant?
Well, that's the tricky part. We only take 2 to 3 a month just because it is quite an intensive process at the beginning. Now we've got a lot more retainer clients because once you've done the groundwork, it is a lot more rinse and repeat. We've got like KPIs in terms of how many podcast appearances do you want, which stages do you want to speak on, what kind of programs do you want to launch, which board roles do you want to apply for, and so forth. So it's a lot easier to do the activity, get the results, refine what worked, what didn't work. But sometimes it's also to prepare for an upcoming board meeting where they have to present and they haven't done that before. So yeah, 2 to 3 a month. Very short answer.
I love the methodology. I mean, I really enjoyed our first time that we had a chance to chat. And I love the way that you have iterated, over the last few years since the last time you were on the podcast. And I just so many lessons that I mean, obviously you've learned, and you've made pivots and you've kind of changed course a little bit here, but the basic framework is still the same, the basic, I guess, formula, for lack of a better term, is still the same. And I really, applaud you on that, because you have, you've been extremely consistent, in the messaging that you put out in the ether there, whether it's on LinkedIn or, other mediums. But what are some of the things that you've learned related to personal brand? Is it more important that I have experience and maybe personal IP, or is it more important that I show up, on socials more often and kind of build that authenticity, or is it a balance of the two?
The dreaded answer, it depends. um, Now, I've got a framework or a little bit of a formula in my trust authority process, and it's called the 3 O's of credibility, meaning the first O is your own credibility, your signature framework based on your experience and expertise, a community that you have built, a podcast that you host, a YouTube channel that you have, whatever that might be, you own it. The other one is on other people's credibility. So we are tapping into established institutions, celebrities, thought leaders, and we tap into the brand by association power, meaning when they are really credible, we get a little bit of a boost when we are associated with them. So we can partner with them. We can say they were our mentor, whatever relationship we had. And the last O, which I think is more important than ever before, is the on the go credibility, meaning you build as you go, you work out loud, you experiment in public, and also document the journey and share the lessons learned. Nowadays, where we have to face so many more challenges and situations that we can't just refer back to 2 or 3, 5 years ago, how did we approach that? I think it's more important than ever to actually be brave and say, this is what I'm doing. Probably it's going to fail. Maybe it works, who knows, but I'll share the lessons anyway. And I actually posted, I think last week, I said, I played it quite safe in 2025. I kind of coasted and cruised, and it's not doing me any favors. Next year, in 2026, because the world doesn't stop, the competition doesn't slow down. Next year, I want to work out loud and have 12 experiments in 12 months. And it could be, completely a flop. One of the goals, for example, is to speak across 12 industries in the 12 months. I've already logged in 3, and now I'm like, a bit of a gamification. Can I get another 3 at the end of this year and then the rest next year and so forth? But I think we need to set ourselves stretch goals. And communicating out loud because people do want to help us. But if we can't explain what we actually want, they're not able to support us along the way. Plus, now more than ever, and this is also why vlogs or the Big Brother series work, people want to see the real, the raw, the not scripted. And the more you can be vulnerable from that aspect, but also have a reason for it, I think the more you actually cut through the noise. Everything and everyone is now so perfect with the beautiful M dashes and the perfectly aligned sentences. And this is why we're all getting tone deaf. Everything and everyone sounds the same. And I cannot relate to that because we are not perfect. But all of a sudden, we all present ourselves with the content so perfectly, and it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly see through that. I mean, just like you can see through the AI generated comments on, LinkedIn. I've got a really funny story about that. I actually did a post on LinkedIn about this, but I have a lot of podcast booking services that reach out to me and want to, pitch their guests, to be a guest on Rising Tide. And for about a month, almost every email I got, it didn't matter from which service I got it from, it was the exact same text. And I was like, this is bizarre. Did you all just type in how to write a podcast booking email in Chat GPT and that's what it pumped out? I mean, and it was so inauthentic and so I mean, it was like an immediate delete. And so, I mean, those poor guests didn't even get a shot, at being on the podcast. And it was just so artificial. And, it's like if you're not even going to take the time, to write your own email about this, then I'm not going to take the time even to review it. And it was I exactly what you just said. One day there's probably going to be a complete revolt against, all things artificial, and we'll go back to pen and paper and maybe actual phone calls with each other and get back to the basics of anti-digital, backlash. But um,
I think so too, because it usually swings from one extreme to the other extreme. And, now because everyone is so perfect, I also predict that spelling mistakes are going to be unique. And the funny thing is, when I wrote my book in 2020, 2021, I didn't have AI, obviously, and I wrote every single of the 76,000 words. And clearly, I'm not Australian, or my mother language is not English. Anyway, I got quite a few emails from, professional copywriters to say, oh, I've seen like those three spelling mistakes and this sentence is not correct and blah, blah. I was like, actually, there's seven spelling mistakes, so you clearly didn't pay attention throughout the books. And guess what? I actually brought it. Like, I can hands on heart say I didn't copy and paste anything. It's all my experience. And yes, it may not be perfect, but guess what? It's still mine. What have you got to show? Like, most people don't even have a book. When the only feedback that you can get is negative criticism without actually offering,
yep.
anything in return, why would you even bother? Like, get a life.
Yeah, and actually, I think the biggest critics are the ones that have never stepped out and taken any chances on their own. So it's easy to sit in their armchair and just be a keyboard warrior, than it is to actually get out
Absolutely.
and try. So
Yes. Whereas if you actually commit to being bold and working out loud and saying, this is my big goal, I want to get 12 keynotes across 12 industries or whatever it might be, people are like, oh, okay. So I know what she wants to do in terms of the profession. So we can also have a branding there without saying, hey, I'm a keynote speaker. Like that's a bit weird. But at the same time, it's like, actually, Johnny Smith just asked me if I would know anyone who could talk about X, and I thought of you. Now, all of a sudden, you create those brand ambassadors for you because they want to be part of this journey. And it's not a hardcore sales, it's not a being annoying, being super perfect. And I think there is something to it. Maybe that's one of the experiments to do the experiments, and it's completely a flop. I'll report on that too.
and yeah, the results will be raw. That's right. Whatever the
That's
results are,
right.
they are. They are.
Yes,
Well, I would love to take as we're, I want to honor your time and I just really appreciate you coming back on the show. But I want you just to speak directly to our audience as we kind of close it down here and just like if if somebody is listening to this and they're sitting in the cubicle and they're like, man, I've got to get out of here. I'm going to die a slow death, in the cubicle here. So what are some things that they could do right now that would kind of start them on this journey of kind of self-discovery and like figuring out like what am I good at? I mean, I picture the old Venn diagram, the icky guy, that says, what are you good at? What does the world need? What can you get paid for? Those types of things. What are some first steps that a listener can take to kind of just start that journey?
I think it's a very simple answer is getting as many experiments and reps in as you possibly can. People often think they have the perfect idea or the perfect business model or the perfect, you name it, to get started. And you are never going to be perfect to start with because there's always something that you can learn. And now looking onto my first programs or my logo, embarrassment. But 8 years ago, I didn't know any better. So I'm glad I did something, got some feedback, got a little bit money along the way. But this is what builds the value that I've got now. And hopefully in 5 years, I look back and think, oh my God, did you really charge for that? That's a bit embarrassing. But that's going to be in 5 years. So test out through a lunch and learn session. Like this is also how I got exposed to and learned about personal branding. I got guest speakers in when I was still in corporate to learn from them, to have some external relationships that I'm building along the way. And then I started to host my own workshop, like a half-day workshop where I was one of 6 speakers. And then I hosted my own workshop. So it's a gradual journey where you build confidence as you become more competent by simply doing one task that overlays. And with that, you also build what we call your skill stack. So it's not just your technical expertise, whatever your profession is, it's you can do public speaking, event management, leadership, change management, whatever it might be, because we have to apply a lot more soft skills when we do those little projects, from organizing a guest speaker to organizing the catering to getting the buy-in from the management team. So there is literally no excuse nowadays to not do something. And companies, I can see that already, are tightening the budgets when it comes to learning and development. Now, if you can get a free guest speaker from the industry who always want to have exposure to your organization in exchange for a bottle of wine or beautiful flowers, not $10,000 speaking fees, of course your management team would say yes, but you need to still create a compelling business case for it. And that sharpens your pitching skills, your communication skills, your negotiation skills that you can then use for your profession anyway. So there's all win-win, no lose-lose situation whatsoever. What the only challenge could be is to get a no. And this is what we have to prepare ourselves with. This is how the world works. Then we try again. Okay, I understand this does not fit right now. What would it take for me to get a guest speaker in?
I love it.
And
I
then we
love it.
shut up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we don't always have to fill the silence with noise. That's exactly right. Sometimes it's just to let it sit there. Well, as we close today, I want you to tell people, give them like a 30-second elevator pitch, if they're a potential, somebody's listening here that might benefit from your services. Tell them just explain kind of in a quick nutshell, what what services you provide, and maybe tell them where they can find out more online.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. Now, how I work is speedy. Like this is one of my core values because the quicker we can get assets out there, the quicker we get feedback, the quicker we can refine. And we're not plodding along for 6 months and then have the first asset ready. So what I've done over the last 5 years, I've condensed my program into a full day where we get immersive, we co-create, and we then design your brand and authority and communication strategy, meaning what do you stand for? How are you positioned against the competition? How do we communicate it to which audience? And how do we commercialize it? Meaning, how do we make money with it? So based on this full day immersion or 2 half days, if we do it online, I then go away and develop the actual roadmap that we need to do. That then, when this is approved, filters into the assets from speaker kit to media sheet to different speaking bios to social media content, you name it, we develop it. Once that's ticked off, we go hardcore. We pitch, we get opportunities, we have little sandbox projects that we're working on to get data, refine what works, what doesn't work, what do we enjoy, and what do we drop? Because often we also have this romantic idea we want to be a public speaker, not realizing how many hours of talking to yourself, rehearsing, recording, changing actually goes in. And all of a sudden, the romance is going down, and we're fine to not be a public speaker anymore. But if we don't have this first-hand experience, we're always fantasizing. So I'm all about getting assets, getting it out there, refine it. Not everything works, but if we're working in silo, we never know what actually would resonate.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, Petra, we will have your website in the show notes for sure, and your LinkedIn profile, so people can also follow you online. But just thank you so much. This has been such a joy to reconnect and just to get a great update of what Petra Zink's been up to in the last couple of 3 years since we talked on the podcast last. But really appreciate you just taking time today and just playing your part in helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Petra, have a great day.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Honestly, what you're doing is amazing. So keep up the great work to inspire even more professionals to do more and to make a bigger impact.
Thanks, friend. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
And now here's a quick word from one of our new sponsors on Rising Tide Startups. Every episode of Rising Tide Startups is sponsored by Pod Brand Media. So you started your own company or branded podcast, and now it's fading. Let Pod Brand give it new life. Check out podbrandmedia.com to learn more. We hope you heard some great takeaways and are now ready to take action yourself. As always, thank you for listening and helping all boats rise in a rising tide.